Okay, good evening, everyone. I would like to welcome you to the December 20th, 2021. It is 6 p.m. It's time to call the City Council meeting to order. Ms. Rose, roll call, please.
Yes, sir. Mr. Austin? Mr. Prime?
Here.
Mr. Hukin?
Here.
Ms. Jones?
Here.
Ms. McGinnis?
Here.
Ms. Nally?
Here.
Mr. Taylor?
Here.
Sir, you have a quorum.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Brian Reese, prayer and pledge, please.
I invite you to join me. Our Father, we come to you this evening as we enter into the final City Council meeting of the calendar year. We just sort of thank you for all the great work that was accomplished here at the city this year. I thank you for the elected officials and public servants that lead our city, as well as those who lead and work in every single department that make this city run and as great as it is. And pray that you bless them for a great year work. As we head into this holiday season, I want to pray your blessings upon the many in our community that will celebrate the birth of Christ, the many who will gather with friends and family and loved ones this season for the giving and receiving of gifts. And I pray that they'd experience it through the scripture that it is more blessed to give than to receive. We thank you so much for your blessings. Be with this meeting. I pray that all that goes on tonight will be led by your guidance and discernment for each and every decision that's made. We love you. It's in your name we pray. Amen. I invite you to stand with me for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated.
Thank you, Brian. Is there any announcements, presentations, or public comment of anything that is not on the agenda? Okay, I only have a couple. I just want to remind everybody that in January, the very first meeting will be January 4th on a Tuesday, and the second meeting is in January is on the 19th on a Wednesday, so that's a little bit out of the normal. So Tuesday and Wednesday in January. Okay, that gets us to consent agenda.
Move to approve the consent agenda as written.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, hearing none, we will go to old business.
Move to approve old business by title only.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to read old business by title only. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that gets us to item number 1, Common Council Ordinance number 21-25, approving the resolution of the City of Franklin Plan Commission and annexing certain property contiguous to the Franklin corporate limits to be known as Lacey Annexation. Senior Planner Joanna Myers.
Good evening. The Leslie annexation is ready for your official action. If approved, it would take effect January 1st of 2023.
And this was introduced November 15th, and we had our public hearing December the 6th. So as Ms. Joanna Tennell said, ready for action or any other questions the council may have for anyone.
For the audience's information reminder, this is the folks that had a septic system fail, and the health department sent them to us and suggested that they be allowed to hook onto our sewers. Part of our policy, we only allow sewers for people that are annexed part of the city. They were very willing to do so and have complied with all the requirements, and in fact are connected. Is that
They were
correct?
connected, yes.
That's correct.
And the property just east of them, the field, has been annexed this last year.
Thank you, Joanne.
I'll make a motion to approve Common Council Ordinance number 21-25 as presented.
I second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, hearing none, the motion carries. Okay, item number 2, Common Council Ordinance number 21-26, approving a resolution of the City of Franklin Plan Commission and annexing certain property contiguous to the Franklin corporate limits to be known as Oakley Farms 2 Annexation. Senior Planner Joanna Myers.
Good evening. This property is approximately 42 acres located on the east side of County Road 600 East. and south of State Road 44. Immediately north of it was the Oakley Farms annexation that previously was approved this calendar year. Introduction was November 15th with the public hearing, and fiscal plan was approved on December 6th and is ready for your consideration and action.
This is the annexation request, is that correct?
That is correct.
And again, if the council has any questions for anyone, please feel free.
And the petitioners, if not, and Peter Norton are in the audience, should you have any questions for them.
We're allowed to make comments?
Yes, sir, this is the time. We had the public hearing last meeting, then we closed it, so it's open for the council to have their discussion.
Okay. This, I hope won't take very long. I'd just like to make a few remarks. Reading through the pleadings for this in the resolution, there were several references to the comprehensive plan. And recently it was pointed out in a social media post that, and I took it as maybe myself, that we should have maybe a better understanding of what is in that plan. And so when I saw the references to the comprehensive plan in this document, I thought maybe it'd be good to do a deeper dive and just see what's in there. And I'd like to just share with you some thoughts, and I've got a suggestion following this. We'll just see how this goes. But the comprehensive plan is a document that was approved in 2013. It's an 8-year-old document. And again, I'll try to keep my comments relative to the matter tonight. It's an advisory tool for the mayor, city council, etc., plan commission, etc. Again, it's a planning tool. The document expresses, and I'm quoting it, general community agreement as interpreted through a 9-month process, including steering committee meetings, interviews, visioning, workshops, focus groups, and public hearings. These are just some interesting things, again, that I think are relevant to this. It states, when properly applied, a comprehensive plan can make the life of the decision maker, meaning me, I'm one of them, easier. Community leaders can, I don't want to just take a shortcut here, community leaders can point to the research or maps while explaining how they reached their decision. It can refer to the input of local leaders and residents whose opinions help shape the plan's goals. They can also ask themselves how they make decisions without a plan. Certainly, their experience in Franklin guides their judgment, but a group of people making decisions based on their individual perceptions may not lead to a shared vision of the city's future. The comprehensive plan provides a defensible, united vision. Okay? Talks about tips for developers. Developers typically ask for more predictability from decision makers in order to maximize their investment. The 2013 plan spells out the community's preferred future, where it wants to extend infrastructure and where it wants housing, industrial, and commercial development. It also suggests changes to zoning code and subdivision regulations. Provides tips for residents. After finding your house on the future land use map, the next step is to read up on community issues that interest you. For example, consult the land use or housing chapters. Again, it talks about those things. Talks about, I don't know if Richard Works is still with us, but expanding TIF districts. It creates and implements a planned approach to to the establishment of a new tax increment finance district to dedicate tax revenues and so forth. Key word there is planned approach. Chapter 6, under land use, talks about education and training. It says a good practice is, and I'm quoting now, probably the most beneficial change would be to provide more training to everyone involved in the planning process, resulting in better and more defensible planning decisions. This is especially important for Plan Commission and BZA members. I would add that it's important for anybody making a decision, even particularly when we have some recent appointees. It isn't a requirement, but it does suggest that all new employees complete an in-house orientation with planning staff before they vote. Use training to make sure that citizen planners understand such things as the difference between conditions and commitments and so forth, and when they should recuse themselves. Again, that's more planning, folks. Consider implementing peer training by inviting board and commission members from other successful planning groups in Indiana to take part. Talks about expanding the pool of board and commission candidates. Applicants can be leadership program graduates, neighborhood association leaders, etc. Found it interesting, it says the new law, and I'm not quoting the law, but it says here, the new law allows appointment of some non-residents who are property owners. Talks about changes to the comprehensive plan. The final word on the comprehensive plan is that as circumstances change, and the plan should be modified to change along with them. This may not mean a complete update, but every year or so, the Plan Commission, staff, and other members should review the plan to make sure it is current. It would be a poor use of the resources poured into creating a plan to let it grow old, to let it slowly grow outdated, while the need for current planning does not. I may suggest we update the plan here just a little bit. Chapter 6 also talks about land use. It talks about, again, keep in mind that this plan was adopted in 2013, okay? At that time, it states in May 2013, there were 3 industrial parcels for sale representing 66 acres. 3 parcels representing 66 acres. It also states that the city needs to work with the Johnson County Development Corporation and regional economic development partners to develop a long-term plan for maintaining an adequate inventory of available industrial land. And of course, we all know that JCDC no longer exists in the form that it once did. We do have a very capable person in Dana Monson that works for the city. But this does not even apply today. But it talks about in 2013 there were 66 acres.
Bob, I don't want to interrupt. The Spire is the JCDC.
I understand that. Okay. But JCDC does not exist today. I'm just saying that the plan has changed. I'll just leave it at that. Thank you. Okay. States under land use goal number 4. Make sure that we have an adequate supply of appropriately located industrial land ready for development, which is important. States that, I'll just read what it says, verbatim. It says it's recommended that a minimum of 250 contiguous acres be maintained for new basic employer growth or expansion of existing businesses. Minimum 250, okay? The language that was noted in our resolution today states that in the 2013 plan, land use plan, indicates that the current inventory of industrial land may not be adequate. It goes on to state that more land is needed to accommodate a variety of employer uses. Again, I'll point out this was made in 2013, and we recall what was happening that time. We were coming out of the depths of the Depression. We were coming out of what I called was a housing depression at that time. And certainly we were feeling the hangover from the 500-year flood that occurred in 2008. The statement made that in our pleadings today that the current inventory may not be adequate is taken from a time in which we didn't have a lot in inventory, which was 8 years ago. And I just question whether we can truly rely on this statement given it was made at a different time and under different circumstances. And that currently we have, by my calculation, and I've got a really haphazard calculation here on how that is, maybe over 600 acres in inventory. Talks about land use, continued. Talks about agricultural areas being generally located outside the current city limits and extending the zoning jurisdiction. Existing agricultural areas within the city limits are prime locations for new development consistent with the future land use plan map. Again, there may not be a lot of areas within the city limits right now. Agriculture is a distinguishable and unique land use that is integral to the character and function of the city. Agricultural open spaces should be conserved where appropriate to maintain an overall compact form to the city. And as I read that, what I wonder is, have we really examined what agricultural areas we would identify as critical or to be conserved, okay? My opinion is, and it's just my opinion, is that we should consider tabling this resolution until we as a community can get our heads around what it is we really need, and in the short term, consider the following. One is providing an overall training or overview training of the comprehensive plan to all council, RDC, planning, Board of Zoning Appeals members. Number two is that we should, in the short term again, we're not talking long term here, tabling it until we can get through these processes, consider an analytical hierarchy process, also known as Six Sigma, not quite sure what that is, to this matter of the East Side development. The city has already undertaken several Six Sigma or analytic hierarchy processes, one being the Redevelopment Commission, which is still in use. At least I think you were involved when that was put into place. I think it's helped us quite a bit with that. I know Franklin Heritage used it when they were approaching the RDC for an art craft grant from the RDC. My understanding that the city has also used this approach in salary considerations for the city. That was done several years ago. I've spoken with Jeff Mercer and Matt Sprout just in conversation, and they are willing to assist the city with this at no charge. Their quote is, we would be willing to give up 2 hours, and would we be willing to give up a couple hours for the benefit of Franklin for the next 50 years? Again, we can maybe review this again, but maybe but since the 2013 plan, and I'm just about done here, thanks for bearing with me, we have completed massive infrastructure projects, gateways, streets, sewers, and I'm not catching them all. With 2023 coming with a complete rebuild of US 31. Certainly the downtown revitalization has occurred. A lot of that was driven by this comprehensive plan as a priority item in which we would rebuild the core of the city and out, not only with commercial but with residential properties. We have turned Franklin since 2013 into a destination city to visit and live. Parks expansion and upgrades certainly is evidenced by what we've got going on here just in the downtown area. I noted that JCDC, even though it's Aspire right now, I wrote that down, no longer exists in its present form. I won't say no more about that. It's probably time in the long term to update completely the comprehensive plan. The prior one had been done in 2002, and we redid it in 2013 after all those cataclysmic events that occurred several years ago. This would allow us to do a deep dive into the city's future and housing needs. I'm not criticizing anybody, I'm making a plea to approach these issues another way, maybe adopting a best practices type of approach where we just kind of step back, not saying yes, not saying no. Let's step back and have a conversation about what we do. I appreciated Dana sent out an article recently to me. I think she sent it to all the council members that identified or at least showed support for warehouse buildings along the corridor and a project in Greenfield. And I read that, and the last statement that they made in that, or the next to the last statement, is that it belongs in a park, an industrial park that they've created. I don't understand, the complexities of that, but certainly I think it's worth us looking at some point where we, maybe as part of this planning process, identify an industrial park. I think, Mac, you did that with the Eastside Tech Park. We did it with the Franklin Business Park where the Linville property's at. Whenever there's a property up for sale in those parks, there's no question. It's already been zoned, it's already been annexed. We don't have these public meetings where we're just tearing at each other and just, I don't know, it just seems like there's got to be a better way of doing things, particularly as we develop an important part of our future out on the east side. And we could go ahead and approve this thing tonight, but all we're doing is we're just delaying what's going to occur again, is that there will be another parcel up for sale. We're going to just revisit this whole thing once again. I think that there's merit for us to step back, maybe not kick this thing down the road too far, but just step back and let's have some discussion and some planning, relying on our comprehensive plan as a tool. And if that thing isn't current, if it isn't relevant today, we could revisit that later on. But honestly, I like to think that I'm not the smartest guy around, but I've been around the block a little bit, and I didn't really have a good understanding of the comprehensive plan until it was pointed out to me that you don't know the plan. Went in and looked at it, oh my gosh, I'm missing out on stuff. I think there needs to be that for all elected and appointed officials where it's relevant. I think for us to be making decisions right now with that, particularly again with new people in, I don't know that it's a responsible way of conducting our business. I don't criticize our Franklin staff. I've worked with Joanna, I've worked very closely with Krista, with RDC over the years. Dana Monson, these are the people close to this stuff. I don't know, I challenge anybody to put those three up against anybody in the state in the community. They're super people. Mayor, I've said this publicly, I support you in your desire to do what's right for Franklin. I've always felt that you handle that as your desire and you do that. I'm not being critical, but I just think there's better ways to do things. I think, again, with the amount of ground that we currently have in inventory as it compares to what's in this comprehensive plan, it appears that we've got a little bit of leeway to take a step back and figure this thing out and what we really want to do on the east side. And that's the end of my comments. I appreciate your listening to me. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob.
Mr. Mayor, if I might, there's a couple of legal things that I want to point out to the board, and it's really unfair because I've lived through 3 comp plans. So actually, they're formally known as master plans, is what you always do, and you have great ideas, but there is a very specific legal manner in which a comp plan, what used to be called a master plan, is adopted. It's basically suggested, recommended, highly suggested that you do it every 10 years. That's why you'll see 2002, 2013. It's on our agenda to look at it in 2022 because it takes about a year. And there's a very specific, and that's why you'll see all of our ordinances always reflect, all the motions always reflect item number 1, how does your comp plan look with regards to rezoning. So I would suggest to you, Bob, that the Planning Commission frequently, that's the first criteria to look at. In order for us to do a comp plan, there's this very specific way. You can't do the Six Sigma kind of way, but what maybe that would do when we get to the point where we do our comp plan, we do it every 10 years, take it for about a year. It will take about a year to get there. We have an inordinate number of public hearings. No one comes. We have the same people over and over again, and it is only when a particular development comes along that people get energized because it's next to their house that they come, and then when we have these public meetings that we're required to have, they don't show up. So this information is good, but we probably have to take some kind of action, whatever your action is on these, because we won't be able to address it for at least a year to get through because of the number of ways the public has to go, the notifications and those kind of things. But that's why comp plans are done about every 10 years.
In addition, I'd like to note that we've actually done, I know 2 updates to the comp plan. One is the pedestrian and bicycle plan, and then also the thoroughfare plan. In addition, we have the I-65 economic development plan, which are all updates to the comprehensive plan.
Great points. I'm just saying, we have vacant meetings all the
Can I
time.
rebut? I don't disagree with you. Honestly, I don't disagree. It does state in here we can do updates. I'm just suggesting that in the long term, we need to, we'll update this now, and it's good to know that it's in the queue to do that at some point. But there's nothing that prohibits us from being trained on this stuff, or given, even a public hearing. And I hear what you're saying. I mean, when I chaired our redevelopment commission, I'm just being blunt. I never really had an issue with somebody that would complain to me because it was all done publicly. They had every opportunity to come in and state their position. While I try to be sympathetic, it's like, well, come in and talk to us. It's just like when we do these things, you're right, people don't come. People generally don't come unless we're in situations like this where it's, it impacts them, and then, again, we do that. But again, we're stuck in this cycle where we're just constantly looking at these things, at a minimum. And I'm not pleading to do it, and however the vote goes, that's fine with me, but I feel like I've got to get this in. I would have liked to have seen, and I take part of the blame for this. I may take a lot of the blame, because we've had discussions that, 4 or 5 years ago, we need to really be looking at what we're going to do out on the east side. and that really meant in terms of a business park. What do we want it to look like? What are the boundaries? And we didn't do anything like that. So what we're doing now is we're dealing with good people that bring deals to us, but that's really all that it's being done kind of piecemeal now, which was kind of what was done on the southwest corner of the exchange for many years, and how that turned out. And I'm not saying that we've got bad. So far, we've been lucky because we've had pretty good people involved and good projects. I just don't like this process of coming in here every 4 or 5 months when a tract of ground is sold, we've got to rezone it and just go through this whole process again. When there's an alternative.
Well, but the comp plan, and that's why, and these are policy decisions you make, but from a legal standpoint, I feel I have to confirm for you. The comp plan and the master plan are a document that deals with the community in general without identifying specific parcels.
Right.
And there's a reason for that. Is because when you then begin with the annexation and the rezonings, you're dealing with a specific parcel, and that triggers certain property rights that aren't triggered by the comp plan. So before us is a petition that must be voted on one way or the other. Whatever it is, that's yours choice, but it has to be voted upon because now you're talking about a specific. The comp plan is not what you use to make those individual decisions. It's one factor when those petitions are in front of you. That's why it's item number 1.
Right.
So that's the difference. You look at the comp plan in general, and maybe that's why people don't come on, because they don't show up, because it's the entire community or whatever you're dealing with directly. So it triggers some property rights when you get to this stage. You could very well have a petition every month, even if you have a revised comp plan.
Well, as I was doing this, there are a couple of things here. And one is, since it's referenced in the document, I feel like I have a right to come in and bring up some other points about the comprehensive.
You're a councilman, you have a right for everything.
But the other thing is, I asked the question of Jeff Mercer and of Matt Sprout, I think I've got his name right, that, if we do a Six Sigma or a analytical review of this in the short term, only just to help as a decision-making tool, which we've utilized before, will it bump into the comprehensive plan? The response I got was, no, it doesn't bump into it, but some of the components of it might go into a longer-term comprehensive plan at such time that it might be revisited. In other words, it's just part of the public discussion that comes into play. We can debate. We're not debating. We're good. And I just wanted to say all that. So thank you for allowing me to get on my soapbox. So
I did also want to address why some of these annexations seem like they're being piecemeal of when they come in. Indiana code requires that a minimum of 1/8 of the exterior boundary of the annexation request be contiguous to existing city limits. In some cases, they've had to reduce the area of the request due to the amount of area that they are contiguous. So some of that is also driven by the parameters of Indiana code, limiting the ability to do it all at one time.
but we have the ability, and I don't disagree, but we have the ability to create a business park.
Not in a comp plan. A comp plan is a
No, I'm just, as a body, as a city, we have the ability to establish a business park.
Well, you'd have to have a petitioner coming in.
Well, but we've done it, and my point is, we've done it in the past.
The city has not done it.
No.
A developer has came to the city with a plan, and we may have participated in assisting with the construction of the first segment of Bartram Parkway, what was Music Land Drive. But we as the city we were not the developer of any of those developments that you had mentioned. It was actually a developer driven.
And I understand we weren't a developer.
But we did not
I know.
spearhead that.
Right, okay.
Right, but that's the difference. The comp plan is a general overview. When they get to this stage, these are very specific properties, and it triggers different legal requirements and analysis. That's all I'm saying. And why, and if this is not the right time for you or whatever, that's a different vote, but that's the interplay between those documents themselves.
Joanne, how many acres do we have out there now that are annexed but undeveloped at this point? Roughly, not holding you to it.
Probably about 600, I think.
Okay, thank you. of all nights not to have a bottle of water in front of me.
I know, I'm very sorry. I do.
I have another.
It's also important to remember that we have the east side interceptor that is currently under construction, just in that same area. Which is,
I think Bob did bring up some good points that would be beneficial for all of us as newer members of the council, as far as some training and additional things like that. I think that would definitely be very instrumental for all of us. Whether it's just understanding better what our comprehensive plan is, or, what everyone's goals are, but legally, I'm not sure how we would have to go about that. But I would be
so one other thing,
in favor of.
one of the things that has been offered in the past is what's called nitty-gritty session that KK Gerhardt generally offers. The past couple of years that has not been offered due to the pandemic. But every year when that does come through the email, I do forward it on to our Plan Commission and Board of Zoning Appeals, and in some years have forwarded it to City Council, which is very much geared to what we do in the Planning Department with the annexations, rezonings, development, all of that. So should that opportunity arise again, I will definitely forward it on. And typically, it's a 2-day session. But we do have, most of our members of the planning department have attended that don't have planning backgrounds. Just so they have a better understand of
Because
our
usually it's
language.
just, usually it's, and it kind of talks about, in general, the overplay of how these documents are. I sometimes think of, one's kind of a constitution, like the comp plan, and then you get your laws. And the laws are what you're dealing with now. You got a specific case that you deal with. The comp plan is kind of an overview. Now, one relates back to the other, but it would be wonderful if we had, the planning people normally do.
In 2011, I think it was, the redevelopment commission, under the encouragement of Cheryl Morphew, who was director of the JCS at that time, suggested, and we did this. We had what was called TIF 101, where we had Larry DeBoer come in, and it ended up being a public session because you can't get everybody together like that. And I found it very enlightening to me, and that's kind of what I. It doesn't have to be a 2-day thing. Just something. Here's the plan. If nothing else, and I'm getting way beyond this. If nothing else, I would like to have a bound copy of the master plan or the comprehensive plan. It's difficult for me to navigate a computer with 360 pages. I can't, it's hard to footnote that.
I've got one on a shelf I'll give you, Bob.
Well, it might be a good tool to have for elected officials. I mean, it's a good reference because it's easy to understand, which makes it good for me. And so anyway, I'll end the discussion.
Joanna and Lynn, we have talked this year 2 or 3 times about going to the Planning Commission and telling them what their duties are, and not going off of emotions, but going off of the laws, what the laws state. So we know that would be a good learning curve for the Planning Commission, and I'm all in favor of having someone tell you what planning and zoning and the BZA, their responsibilities. I mean, I think I know, and I don't know it all, obviously, but I do think, being around a lot of years, I have looked at the plan document, and I found it to be boring, but the basic parts of it, I really believe that this council has done a real good job of going off of the plan and, listening to what we listened to this summer. And I will tell you, I've spent many, many nights listening, Aaron, I take your concerns very seriously, and so I want you to know that when people get up and speak, it is being listened to. And it may not turn out the way, you and I may have a difference of opinion, but what your opinion is means a lot to me. I just want you to know that. So, and I don't have a vote in this tonight, so I know which way I want it to go, but I respect I respect you.
Well, and along the way, and again, I am just talking the law. The policies are your folks, so I don't want to insert myself, but I do think it's important to remember on annexations and on rezonings, if you are going to have a vote, again, the statutes are very clear on this. It requires a majority of membership of the entire council. There are other instances where the mayor breaks the tie, so let's assume there was a 3-3 split and the mayor would make a tie. Planning and zoning ordinances, annexations are not those types of cases. The statutes are very clear. Now, the statute is something different than a comp plan. The statute is very clear that it must be, any official action must be taken by a majority of the elected body. So you'll need a 4-number vote, one way or the other.
Well, we had a 5-0 negative vote about a month ago, but it was brought back in.
Correct.
In reverse.
Correct.
So if it's a negative vote tonight, it doesn't necessarily mean it's the final vote.
Well, I did probably, in order for it to be a negative vote, it's going to require to be a 4-2. In order for it to be a positive vote, it's going to have to be a 4-2. That's all I'm saying. Because the mayor does not vote.
Okay.
In other types of cases, the mayor breaks a tie. So if you had a 3-3, the mayor would break a tie. Zoning is very particular. It has to be a majority of the entire elected body, which you have a 7-member body, so it will need 4 votes.
And if it doesn't get it, can it come back in?
If it ends up being 3-3, it will then automatically be continued until your next meeting. Because you will not have official action. Official action requires you to have a majority of your entire board membership, council
I
membership.
think the question Bob's asking, if it goes 4-2 against, what happens?
Well, it's defeated.
That's your question.
Well, my question was about a month ago, and I've wondered this, I've been wanting to ask the question.
Well, I know what your question is going to be. The fiscal plan was different than the rezoning request before you. They have a right to have, the petitioner has a right to have a vote. They may not like it, but they have a right to have a vote.
Right.
So the fiscal plan can only be adopted if you're going to, you must adopt a fiscal plan if you're going to do an annexation or a rezoning, okay? The fiscal plan was what was brought back for reconsideration because ultimately you had to make a final vote on annexation.
Yeah.
Annexation and rezoning are different.
They brought back a totally different fiscal plan.
Correct.
From what we had.
Correct.
voted on.
Correct. But even with the adoption of the fiscal plan, you were not required to do the annexation or the rezoning. But you could not move forward with it. So that's the different creatures. And it's just, unless you work with these all the time, they're pretty sticky kind of.
So the question Bob just asked, that wouldn't be answered in the fiscal plan, or be in the comprehensive plan, that question wouldn't be answered.
She got it, Mayor.
I know, but I'm just saying, there's two different questions there. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. Well,
One's law, and one is master plan.
Or comp plan.
Yeah.
Those terms are interchangeable. We used to call them master plans.
I kept looking for this master plan out there. I couldn't find it.
Interchangeable, that's what we used to use in the 90s, 2000. Of course, I don't remember, I was too young then, but that's the word we used to use. Now it's a comprehensive plan.
Been to Mars and back looking for this master plan.
Yeah.
In cyberspace.
So we are on ordinance number 21-26. Is that correct?
Correct. Annexation.
I would move to approve Common Council Ordinance 21-26.
Second.
Jamie, we should have a roll call vote, just for clarity. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Ma'am?
So we have a motion and a second, so Ms. Rhodes, would you do the roll call, please?
Mr. Prime,
Aye.
Mr. Hukin,
Nay.
Ms. Jones,
Aye.
Ms. McGinnis,
Nay.
Ms. Snally,
Aye.
Mr. Taylor.
Aye.
Okay, that's 4-2, is that correct?
Correct.
So,
That's official action.
okay, we have official action there. We'll go on to the next item. Common Council Ordinance number 21-27, approving resolution 21-36 of the City of Franklin Plan Commission rezoning certain property to industrial light to be known as Oakley Farms 2, rezoning tabled from previous meeting. Senior Planner Joanna Myers.
Good evening. The subject property is exactly the one that was ordinance 21-26. This was heard by the Plan Commission at their October 19th meeting, and a favorable recommendation with commitments was forwarded. Introduction was November 15th, with a public hearing on December 6th, and is ready for the board's consideration and action.
This is 21-27.
Yes, ma'am.
I'll make a motion to approve Common Council Ordinance number 21-27.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Ms. Rhodes, again, please, roll call.
Yes, sir. Mr. Prine,
Aye.
Mr. Hukin,
No.
Ms. Jones,
Aye.
Ms. McGinnis,
No.
Mr. Taylor,
Aye.
and Ms. Nally.
Aye.
Okay, Ms. Rhodes, I believe that was also 4-2. Motion carries. Thank you, Joanna. Go on to the next item. Common Council Budgetary Ordinance number 21-26. Additional appropriation grants, JAG Police, AED Supply 230-013-200 in the amount of $6,918. Please, Chief Kirby Cochran.
Thank you, Mayor. Great discussion tonight. I'm sorry for being boring here. Just asking to move some
I love your voice.
move some funds from the JAG grant that we received, the amount of $6,918 to purchase some AEDs for our police cars.
Okay, and this was introduced December the 6th. I'm not sure if we had a public hearing at that time, so we can open this up.
It's set for public hearing today.
So
Yeah.
open it up for public hearing
Correct.
tonight. So is there any one in the crowd wish to ask the chief what's he going to use this money for, or anyone on the board have any questions for the chief? Public hearing is closed. I want to see if somebody's going to question.
I like to keep it boring.
Okay, public hearing is closed, so any more questions from the council? We're ready for action, and it is ordinance number 21-26.
Move to approve ordinance 21-26.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
We'll go on to the next. Common Council Budgetary Ordinance number 21-27, an additional appropriation MBA Services 201-001-300 in the amount of $617. Clerk Treasurer Jane Rhodes.
Yes, this was brought before you at the last meeting. This is to repay the county money for a mowing lien that shouldn't have been collected.
Okay, so it was introduced December the 6th. I'm going to ask, open up to a public hearing at this time. If anyone wants to ask Ms. Rhodes any more about the $617. Hearing none, I will close the public hearing, and now it is up to the council for budgetary ordinance number 21-27.
I'll put a star by your name.
Move to approve 21-27.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, hearing none, we will go on to new business.
Motion by title only, please.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to read new business by title only. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. Item number 1, Common Council Budgetary Resolution number 21-11, authorizing a transfer from Police 200 supplies to Police 300 services in the amount of $9,500. Police Chief Kirby Cochran. And I believe this one can be, take action tonight because it's not new money, it's money being moved.
Yes, sir. That's correct.
Motion to approve. You talk about it, I guess.
Oh, my
Second.
goodness. My whole train of thought.
Okay, we have a motion and a second.
That's it?
That's it?
It's done.
Well, we gotta vote on it.
Yeah, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
That's what you really wanted to say?
Rick, just sit down.
Okay, next item, Common Council Budgetary Resolution number 21-12, authorizing a transfer from the MVH services to the MVH supplies in the amount of $4,000. Street Commissioner Brett Jones. We can also take action on this because it's not new money. It is Budgetary Resolution number 21-12. Mr. Jones.
This is so I can pay the county back their money that you just approved.
Yes.
No, just moving money within line items to pay bills for the end of the year.
Move to approve budgetary resolution number 21-12.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we'll move on to the next item, which is introduction only. Common Council Ordinance number 21-28, approving trash collections, curbside recycling, and collection of fees. City Attorney Glenn Gray.
Thank you, sir. Pursuant to your instructions at the last meeting, I drafted the attached ordinance, which quite frankly is a compilation of various ordinances I reviewed. I believe the direction that I was given was to consider the fee being passed along and one fee at one rate. And the method by which this billing would occur for both the recycling and the trash pickup would be, it would be included on the sewer bills for everyone. And they would go out monthly to those folks who get a sewer bill from the city. Also, in the ordinance, I included a potential for an abatement for someone who had a vacant house or was going to have an unoccupied house. I believe it was Councilwoman McGinnis that indicated at least 90 days. I tried to create a process by which someone who was going to meet that 90-day threshold would 30 days prior to the date that it is going to be effective appear before the Board of Works, and in their discretion they could authorize the abatement of that amount for the trash fees. As it relates to collection, even though the bill would go on the sewer bill, we would have 3 line items on the sewer bill. I've met with Sherry on numerous occasions to discuss this. What would happen is you would have your sewer service, you would have your stormwater fee, which is also passed as a matter of ordinance, and then you would have your trash and recycling fee. That money that would be collected would then go in a designated fund, and it would be used to offset our expenses associated with that, because as you know, we've already entered into a contract for raised trash so that trash and recycling will occur starting in January on. This ordinance won't be probably effective until about April before we would actually start sending those bills out if it would occur. Collection of the monies, if someone fails to pay, would be done through small claims court. Sherry and I talked about what typically happens with truck enforcements. We usually gather some truck cases and they'll send them to me on about a quarterly basis. I end up going to city court to enforce the truck violation. So we established a similar process. When someone fails to pay their sewer bill or their stormwater recycling bill, it becomes a lien on their property. This would not be a lien on property because it's not authorized as a matter of statute. The manner in which this is technically considered by you is if you direct me tonight to set this matter for a public hearing, which I would recommend would be the January 4th meeting. Then there will be an advertisement in the newspaper. The Daily Journal told me if I can tell them by tonight, they will then have it on the agenda for published on Wednesday. Essentially, the ordinance as drafted in its entirety will be part of that publication. The statute requires that we do it one time, given it's the holidays. If you tell me that we can do it tonight, the Daily Journal will run it 2 times for us, because I didn't know if people would be gone this week. At least it would be gone next. They would also have notice by next week. We would then have a full public hearing on January 4th to consider. The public would know about this. The ordinance will also be on our website for people to look at if they want to look at it, but it will actually be published in the newspaper. I do want to tell you that just because it's published in the newspaper doesn't mean it's been in effect. So if you get your constituents ask about it, it's something that has to be in there before we can have a public hearing on it. So with that, I will entertain any questions. Yes, sir?
Will Jeff Peters be back for that meeting? Will he be here? Because I was allowed to sit in on some early meetings, I think earlier in the year when we were talking about this. And I know the first time he came in with it, I appreciate him being here.
Yes, sir.
One question, and I'll disclose that my wife's asked me more than anybody, but I've gotten it from a couple others, is that in our budget, we have money currently allocated for trash service, and this, since the public will be picking up the full extent of this, question is what's going to happen in the budget with those unused funds. I'm not asking today, I'm just saying that question could come up, and that's something I'm going to kind of have my radar up on, so just kind of a heads up on that. So.
A great question. That was one of the reasons that a lot of people said, when would it be effective for us? But obviously we wouldn't want to have, I wouldn't think you would want to have a gap in service. So before this really goes into effect, it would probably be April before we start collecting any money. So given the amount, we're talking $100-something thousand a month is what it will cost, which the city will be picking up in January, February, March. Bills go out in April, so there probably won't be a surplus. However, the way the ordinance is drafted, the way the law requires, the money that we collect from this will go into a specifically identified fund that is intended to defer the cost of our contract with Ray's. So going forward, and Jeff, to answer your question, Jeff will be here so he can describe this. So probably given the time between when we consider it, adopt it, publish it, then start collecting it, there probably won't be as much of a surplus that you might think, because we're not going to get 12 months.
Well, I'm actually looking more in the rears. The question had to do more with, in the past we budgeted money, and that budget item will go away, but where will those funds be allocated somewhere else? Will that just roll into the rainy day fund or something like that?
So
you don't have to answer that.
No, I want to answer that, Bob. I appreciate the question. So, like for this year, if there's money left, and I do anticipate to be a little bit left, but before you can ever spend it out of that line item, you have to come to the council anyway. So probably what would happen at the end of the year 2022 at this time, or start of 23, you know how we come to the council and we rake some money over to the rainy day, or we leave it into the general fund. That's where those funds would go back into that general or rainy day. We can't spend it. And then going forward, we're still going to have some money in that fund, because there probably will be a few people that won't pay, plus that we'll have to go ahead and pay Ray's until Mr. Ray goes to court and gets the money back. So we will have a trash collection fund. This year I think we had $1.1 million right there, and the contract you've seen is right at 1.7. So we're at a shortage if we don't do anything. That's $600,000 now. But no, the money would be raked over at the end of the year, or just left in the general fund. But that will be identified with the clerk treasurer's office.
And you also in future budget years then can just have a little more real-time information. But don't forget, we also have part of Ray's contract. We are paying, the city is paying for the city's trash. So we still have that portion of the contract. So we will still have some obligations for the city. We could also, if you desire to do this, and Jeff will do a much better job than I can, you can also defray some of your administrative costs that Sherry will incur as a result of doing the billings. You can also do some of your administrative costs incurred by our street department if they continue to do the leaf and limb removal. And so having this designated fund, I think we'll get a clearer picture for council members of exactly how much we're paying and how much we're getting in, and you can probably do a better job of budgeting in the future.
And I did ask Ray's Crash to be here for the public hearing as well, to answer some questions that I know that we'll have and that the audience will have to answer those. So,
I feel like I'm the
no, that's good. Go ahead.
mention the spokes tonight or something like that, but I got a question for
I
Brad,
appreciate
it can wait, so.
But if you are so inclined, I would ask for a motion to publish a notice of public hearing for January 4th at your regularly scheduled meeting.
So moved.
Thank you, sir.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. Unless there's any other question, we'll close this conversation and go on to other business, which there isn't any other business. You know, Ann, I'm always saying I'm looking down that end.
Yeah.
Bob has moved down here, and now I'm looking down this
I
end.
know. See? It's all about.
Watch your back.
Well, I trust you with my back, Bob. I must have. Okay, council, there's no other business, so let's go to council member comments. And I'd like to start with the mayor's new council with Will McGinnis, and I kind of seem to stick your head in for another corner there. So.
You know, the two meetings I've been to recently were this one and the last one, and I'm glad I picked the two most exciting meetings to come to. That's all.
Thank you, Will. Sean?
Nothing tonight, sir.
Mrs. McGinnis?
I just wish everyone a very Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
Brian?
Yeah, I just want to wish everybody Merry Christmas and everything, and thanks to all our city workers for all the great work they've done throughout the year.
Thank you. Ms. Jones?
Just happy holidays to everyone and try to be safe.
Mr. Cuban?
Well, thank everybody for allowing me to make this a Festivus. Actually, I gotta just let you know, I'll be here on the 4th. I'm missing bowling on Tuesday night to do that, but I have a commitment on that following, that 19th. I can't be here for that.
And I won't be here on the 19th either.
So,
Okay, the 19th, that's the one you already told me about, right?
Yeah. and that one I have. I did want to just make a public comment about something. I've never seen the Glen Miller Orchestra live here, but I had an opportunity to do that last Wednesday. Tell Rob Schultz and the Art Craft folks, that was amazing. To have a class act in that facility, which is a class facility in Franklin, was like, I was just overwhelmed. I was awed by the whole experience. And I don't get impressed by a lot of stuff, but I was impressed by that. That's like it. That was a good day, and I just want to just vocalize how proud I was to be in that audience that day. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Rainey?
Just happy holidays, everybody. See everyone next year.
Jane?
Nothing except I appreciate all of you. When I read the problems and headaches that other clerk treasurers from towns have, and I go to these meetings and they're talking about how their council chambers just people are on them all the time about everything, and I look at them and go, no idea what you mean, because I work with the best. So I thank you all very much. It's really,
and mayors and clerk treasurers.
oh yeah.
Yeah, they are unique.
But I do appreciate it very much. So Merry Christmas.
Great.
And nothing other than, Jane, you do remind me, we are all pretty blessed to live in the community we live in. So
We are.
everybody have happy holidays.
And I just want to thank the council, getting through another year. This has been a rough year, and we can come back on January the 4th and start all over. Merry Christmas, and we'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.